This is Steve Cochran, and this is Live from my office. Look, it's over, right? For 5 years, we've watched and heard and read and listened to the worst reality show ever, the Trump presidency. And when I say the worst reality show ever, I'm including Dr. Pimple Popper. I'm including Sex Box, the reality show. I'm including The Apprentice. Now, some of you may be saying, hey, The Apprentice wasn't a bad show. Well, in its time, no. But The Apprentice is the only reason we got this guy, because without The Apprentice and the fame he got from it, there is no President Trump. 5 years of tweets and scandals and tweets and chaos and more tweets. I'm tired, and I know you are too. Let's go back 4 years. 4 years ago, Trump did his American Carnage inaugural address. If you don't remember it, you can just picture it was kind of like The Walking Dead without the warmth. America was nothing like that address, but as soon as he finished it, he started delivering the carnage. And it turns out it didn't end that day. It started that day. Look, the therapy that we all get from saying how we feel about Trump, that's not wrong. It's human. But it's got to be over now. We need to move away from Trump. We need to ignore Trump. The facts are this: he was the worst president in the history of the United States of America by any objective measure. But you know what? Let's let historians tackle that. And he was, is, and he's always going to be a really, really, really bad guy. I know a little bit about this. See, hitting Trump hard every day, it actually cost me my job. Well, I miss the great radio audience. Most of you have come over here to the podcast, and everybody's welcome. So if you have friends that used to listen to me on the radio, don't know what happened to me, I'm not in the witness protection program. I'm here doing live from my office. Help them figure out how to hear the podcast, and I appreciate it. And I mean this when I say this. I have no regrets. I haven't had a regret for a single day. Because unlike Donald Trump, everything I said about him was true. So I'm serious when I say this. Even though I can't officially promise it and say I'll never go back, I would love for these to be my final words about Donald Trump. This past fall, I put together something I called the Trump dump list. It covered the final 100 days that led up to the election. It was one bad Trump thing for each of those 100 days. So as you can imagine, there's plenty of material. Problem wasn't making sure I had 100. The problem was figuring out what to leave out. That Trump dump list, by the way, is still available at CochranShow.com. It's on the page I call Coch Rantings when you go there. And the whole glorious run, including clips from most of the posts, is still on my Twitter feed as well. You can follow me there at Cochran Show. That's at Cochran Show. Oh, and by the way, yes, Donald Trump, I'm still on Twitter. So my last words on Donald Trump are actually a shorter list. And we're going to get to that. And also, Joe Walsh. Joe Walsh will join us. Now, here's what I want to tell you about Joe Walsh. Joe Walsh made a lot of mistakes. He said a lot of really harsh things. But then Trump broke him. He is a conservative. He believes in conservatism. But unlike Hannity or Limbaugh, he took the exit ramp to decency so he could look at himself in the mirror. He called out Trump every chance he got, and he blew up his own radio career. So don't dismiss him based on an old opinion. Hear some of what he has to say, because he'll be in the second segment on today's show. Of course, all of this, as always, is brought to you by Team Hochberg, 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com. He just wants to save you money. My last words on Donald Trump are coming up. In the meantime, thank you for new record high numbers in listeners and subscribers. And I hope you'll subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening to Live from My Office. And we're back after this. If you're purchasing a new home or refinancing your existing home, then you need to do what we do when we need to figure out money. And it's related to our homes. Well, we all call Team Hochberg, your trusted local lender. Over the past 20 years, David has built his business helping first responders and medical professionals with their mortgages. And he wanted to do more than just say thank you. So every week this year, Team Hochberg recognizes first responders and medical pros for keeping us safe and healthy. This past couple of weeks, he has focused on certain geographical areas, including recognizing Police Chief Doug Flint, Deputy Chiefs George Pappas, Kelly Derry, and the 64 police officers and 12 civilian staff at the Glendale Heights Police Department getting the rare sitting ovation right now. We want to thank them and support locally owned businesses too. Well, Team Hochberg purchased pizzas from Pronto's Pizza in Glendale Heights for the men and women there. Pronto's Pizza, owned by John Mully and Mark Segrist. First responders and medical professionals deserve our respect, and local businesses need our financial support. You can accomplish both by buying first responders lunch, if you can pull that off. Do that from locally owned businesses. And if you have questions about a mortgage, do what we do. Call Team Hochberg. Team Hochberg is at 855-56-DAVID, or go to 56david.com. That's 855-563-2843, or 56david.com. And tune into Home Sweet Home Chicago, hosted by David Hochberg, Saturday mornings, 10 a.m., WGN. Homeside Financial and is an equal housing lender. NMLS number 1124061. Welcome back to Live from my office. It's time for the Carnage Countdown. Trump's terrible top 10 of selfish, clueless, cruel, narcissistic, and just plain stupid things that he did that will forever mark the 4 years that we've survived of Donald Trump. So, with the help of the president, let's get underway right now.
Number 10.
Number 10 is Twitter. You know, Jack Dorsey and that beard makes him look more like a drifter than a billionaire CEO, but at least he had the balls to step up and finally cut Donald Trump off at the knees. After the Trump riots on January 6th, Jack Dorsey and the folks at Twitter said enough is enough, and they killed his account. And that's Trump's lifeline. That's what he counted on, because that's where he could hide. That's where he could be the coward that he is. Say anything he wanted with no repercussions. It was only after that Facebook stepped up, and then YouTube, and Amazon Web Services shut down Parler, where so many of these thugs and creeps went to plan their next attack. We'll never be able to know how many lives were saved and how many injuries were saved by this move, but it started with Jack Dorsey at Twitter, and he deserves credit for shutting Donald Trump down. Meanwhile,
Number 9.
Number 9 on the terrible Trump 10 is women. He didn't like women. Whenever I heard people say, well, of course he loves women, he promotes women. Please. Treats women terribly. Always has. And I'm not just talking about his 3 wives. He took the female reporters and anchors and interviewers and anybody trying to do their job, was patronizing to them at best, talked down to them, talked over them, insulted them, because that's who he is. It's a bully. Meanwhile, he also needs women, but not in the way most of us do. He needs women to have sex with. Well, we need that too, but it doesn't matter if they say yes in his case. That's why there's a long list of 26, and I guarantee you there's more, who claim that Trump sexually abused them. Women that didn't know each other, women that haven't met, women that aren't profiting off of this assertion, women that have turned their lives upside down by telling the truth to try to shut him down. It's not a coincidence. It's not a setup. Donald Trump is about as innocent as Bill Cosby, and not nearly as funny. And the incoming vice president doesn't escape any of it. He couldn't have been more dismissive and sexist and racist, a specialty of Donald Trump, to Kamala Harris, who he called the first woman of color on a major party presidential ticket. He called her the meanest, most horrible, most disrespectful of anybody in the U.S. Senate. He said she was extraordinarily nasty. He called her a mad woman, an insult to the country. This monster on stage, that's Donald Trump. That's who he is.
Number 8.
Number 8 is destroying norms. Norms are the things we count on. And the things that we can always count on in government include you don't get to hire your family when you're president and make a bunch of money for them. and for you. But that's the whole nepotism thing that Trump did. Trump also kissed up the dictators while he trashed our friends, made nice with Kim Jong-un. More on that coming up. And Putin, more on that coming up. But there was also Saudi Arabia, even after a reporter working for an American paper was murdered by the Saudi kingdom. And he trashed our friends. He trashed the UK. He trashed Germany. He trashed France and Canada. How do you trash Canada? They're so nice. Other norms that were destroyed by Trump in no particular order. Made a bunch of money for the Trump properties, as I mentioned. Even charged the Secret Service through the nose, the people that kept him alive. He charged them through the nose whenever he flew off the Trump properties while they were protecting him. Blew off all his intel briefings. They had 5 bullet points instead of the daily presidential brief, so it would be easier for him. Couldn't handle that. They reduced it to 3 bullet points. He stopped reading those. And once he stopped reading those, they stopped giving them to him. It's probably for the best. But what wasn't was his constant trashing of the FBI and the CIA and our other intelligence agencies, the best in the world. And he blew them off. And even at one point at that famous meeting in Finland, said he talked to Putin. He believes Putin, not our intelligence people. The ass-kissing cabinet that he formed, he eventually got rid of the people that would hold him to account and question his decisions, and then surrounded himself with yes men and yes women. But you remember that ass-kissing cabinet meeting where he went around the table and everybody had to say how thrilled they were to be working for Donald Trump? Now, those private Putin meetings, we may never get an explanation of those. But he went so far at one is to kick out everybody else in the room. It may have even been more than one, where there'd traditionally be note takers for the record. There'd be interpreters and there'd be people on both sides because you have to monitor the people that are actually in the meeting. Not in the case of Trump. He claimed voter fraud long before this fall, right after he won the Electoral College and became president, but lost the popular vote to Hillary Clinton by more than 3 million votes. He said those 3 million votes were fraudulent, formed a committee. The committee eventually disbanded in about 30 days because there was no voter fraud to be found. I mentioned Twitter before. Another normie blew up announcing policy on Twitter, announcing everything on Twitter, hiring and firing, and sudden whims he might have because he saw it on Fox News. Speaking of the news, trashing the news is hugely problematic. And this fake news thing that he drummed into everyone's head that was willing to listen. Well, I'm telling you, ABC, NBC, CBS, PBS, CNN, MSNBC, and the Fox News Channel all did a terrible job defending themselves and are going to have to figure out now how to get trust back because we have to have a viable press covering government. We do. And the good news is Biden welcomes it. How about when he fired Jim Comey and the next day he had a couple of Russian bigwigs in his office with nobody else allowed in and was laughing with them about how he fired Comey and now the heat was off him? It happened. He didn't go to any of the White House correspondents' dinners. This may not be a really vital thing, but it certainly does show who he is. He has no sense of humor about himself. He'll give you shit, but he can't take any. There were no press briefings after a while. Sean Spicer tried. Sean Spicer lied. Everybody that followed eventually got to do it less and less. Trump would then do his helicopter, shout questions at him. He'll answer a few things, but the briefings went away. And that's how the administrations would communicate and the American people would get information on a daily basis, but not with Trump. He claimed Obama spied on him. Just absolute nonsense and proven to be wrong. Meanwhile, another big norm, don't talk about other presidents in that way, especially when you accuse them of things like a felony. He promoted the idea that there was a deep state, which led to all these conspiracy theories and things like QAnon. And if you know anybody that follows QAnon, maybe it's me. But if your leader is a guy wearing a fur vest with horns coming out of his fur hat who's just been arrested for multiple felonies, maybe you need a new organization. Trashed NATO, never understood NATO and trashed it constantly. Gave up classified info at fundraisers and any other chance he had to the point where he wasn't given classified info, the President of the United States, at the same level. Held the Republican Party hostage. I don't feel so bad for these Republicans that sold out to him. And hopefully Costco will have a deal on spines soon so you can get a lot for a smaller price. Didn't agree to a peaceful transfer of power, isn't showing up at the inauguration. In the big picture, it's all fine, but an embarrassment. But trashing the election and not conceding is just, it's inexcusable. Here's the deal. We now have to restore confidence in something that was always a given, and that's a free and fair American election. If you still have people in your life who claim that the election was rigged, smack them over the head with something. But in the meantime, if you do get into an argument, know your facts, because they're pretty simple. Republicans and Democrats control local elections, not one party or the other. If the president's vote was fraudulent, every Republican that won on the ballots he claimed were fraudulent would have lost too. Meanwhile, mail-in votes favored Dems because Trump started trashing mail-in voting, saying the election was rigged, and dampened his own turnout. And states have different rules on when they count votes. I wish it was all uniform, but it's not. There were no secrets. There was no surprise that the vote went the way it did in regards to the waves of when the vote count came in. So it was challenged in court. You have a right to do that, and he did. 62 lawsuits later, 61 times, judges, including many, many, many judges appointed by Trump, threw the cases out. And the one, by the way, that wasn't an automatic loss was a technicality that was never really fully resolved. Meanwhile, all this could be summed up with this. If Rudy Giuliani's your lawyer, a guy that makes Joe Pesci from My Cousin Vinny look like Thurgood Marshall, well, maybe your case isn't that good to begin with. The election wasn't rigged because it couldn't be rigged. I mean, come on. Grow up.
Number 7.
Trump's treatment of the military is outrageous and just is a window into his soulless soul. Here's a guy who said that John McCain wasn't a hero. McCain wasn't a hero because Trump said, I like people who don't get caught. He also said he knew more than the generals. He said it on Twitter. He said it in some pressers. And he called American soldiers who were prisoners of war or have been killed in action suckers and losers. This from a guy who had multiple deferments to Vietnam because his daddy paid off a doctor. And somewhere down the road in the past 4 years, somebody cornered him enough to ask him about his bone spurs. He couldn't even remember which foot it was. My God, he's embarrassing. We move on with the Trump Terrible 10.
Number 6.
North Korea, mentioned briefly, but let me just give you a little more detail. Trump said he was in love with Kim Jong-un, one of the worst people on the planet, one of the most oppressive regimes ever, human rights violations we can't even imagine, starving his own people, and he would nuke us tomorrow if he could get away with it. That's Kim Jong-un. But Trump's in love with him, and Trump legitimized him by giving him something no other president would. A visit by the American president. Kim Jong-un won, as did China in this Chinese trade war. The Chinese government has acted irresponsibly and illegally forever. Trump wasn't wrong to call him out, but he had no clue what he was doing, including not even understanding that the increased tariffs that he insisted be put on China would be paid for by the American people. And the farmers got crushed. And when the farmers got crushed, they had to be supported more by the government, more tax dollars. One hot mess that cost jobs and cost money by the great deal maker. Let me tell you something. Donald Trump couldn't get a discount from Bed Bath & Beyond. So why don't we put together something that lets him know that this notion that he's a great deal maker is just a giant steaming pile of you know what.
Number 5, beautiful number 5.
Number 5 is the Mueller report and Ukraine. The Mueller report, the only reason he escaped from this is because Bill Barr was the attorney general, and he allowed Donald Trump to hide behind this Justice Department memo, not court tested, but a Justice Department memo that said the President of the United States should not be charged with a crime while he's in office because he has to focus on his job. It's just laughable. And Mueller said so when he testified to Congress, and it's in the report. Read it. Donald Trump escaped from the Mueller report and everything related to it, not because he was innocent, but because of a technicality. Meanwhile, Ukraine, without Mitch McConnell, he probably could have been convicted in the Senate. But McConnell broke the oath that he took to have a fair hearing of what the House decided when he said up front, after taking his oath, before the Senate trial even started, and after visiting Trump in the White House, that he knew how it was going to end, and Trump would not be kicked out of office. That's what we've been dealing with. And the Ukraine situation served to trash the whistleblower concept. Now, it's savable, but whistleblowers are necessary in government to keep government honest. But in Donald Trump's world, they just got in the way. Just another outrageous moment in the Trump terrible 10 as we continue.
Number 4.
Number 4 is one of the worst. It's the taking of border kids. You know, when families came to the United States, they came to the border expecting to be able to get in and plead their case for asylum because things were so terrible and dangerous in their home country, in Central America in most cases, that they had to get out. And the family separation that went on wasn't started by Trump, but he and his creeps took it to a new level. And they didn't even give these families and those kids the same treatment your coat gets at the dry cleaner. We didn't have a system, apparently, to know exactly where the kids were. So when the parents were processed and sent back home or kicked out of the country, the kids could be returned. And to this day, we still don't know where some of these kids are, where some of their parents are, and the damage that's been done to them. It's just sickening. Number 3 on the list. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. President. That's your job.
Number 3.
He brings out the worst in everybody, and he has. People you never thought would sell out, like Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley had a really bright future. Now she's just another Republican sellout, as are so many others. Lindsey Graham, who knows what Lindsey Graham is? He doesn't know what he is. But so many people have attached themselves to Trump because he was their useful idiot. And it's all turned out to be a really bad thing from them. He does turn everything into trash. And every decision that's made is about him. I don't care what you claim he accomplished. I don't care what you think he did for you. Everything was about him. When he got up in the morning, he thought about Donald Trump. That's all he thought about all day. That's what he thought about when he went to bed. How could he achieve what he needed to make him feel better about himself? He's the biggest attention whore I've ever seen. And he is just absolutely crushed when he doesn't get that attention. He's going to be screaming, look at me, look at me, look at me now that he's out. And we have to look the other way. You keep that in mind. We're down to our final
Number 2.
Or at least close to it, the riots and the vote fraud lie. So much has been said about this and will continue to be said about this, but know that this is his legacy. When people talk about Trump 100 years from now, they will talk about the lie about the vote and the Trump riots at the Capitol. First time the Capitol's been damaged since the War of 1812. And as I said, they weren't wearing fur hats when I tweeted it out a week ago. They were dressed better when they tried to burn the Capitol down. The Brits, in that case. In this case, it was Americans attacking the symbol of American democracy. Yeah, nice.
And number 1.
Number 1 is obviously COVID. Donald Trump didn't want COVID to be on his record, so he hoped it went away. That was his entire plan. He hoped it would go away. Did he listen to experts? No, of course he didn't. He had briefings where experts were just side pieces. As a matter of fact, he even handed out horrific advice. And God bless the family members, the loved ones of the 400,000 that have died so far. It never had to be this bad. And for this reason alone, even though it's not the case or part of the case of this second impeachment, good God, make sure this guy never runs for president again. Do you remember this? This sums it all up. Of course you remember this. How about you put a little light on from the inside out and maybe get yourself a little drink of bleach?
So I ask Bill a question that probably some of you are thinking of if you're totally into that world, which I find to be very interesting. So supposing we hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just very powerful light, and I think you said that hasn't been checked, but you're going to test it. And then I said, supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do either through the skin or in some other way. And I think you said you're going to test that too. Sounds interesting. Right, and then I see the disinfectant, where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number of the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that. So that you're going to have to use medical doctors with. But it sounds interesting to me. So we'll see. But the whole concept of the light, the way it kills it in 1 minute, that's pretty powerful.
So many times in the last 4 years that we'll never see again, I smacked myself in the head so hard watching that clown that I knocked myself out. I'm looking forward to less headaches. But what have we really learned? Well, we've learned that we can't elect a TV character, that's all he is, who's a con man with no substance or conscience or shame, who doesn't have any interest in doing the job or learning the job he's supposed to do every day. It's a bad idea and it can't happen again. We also learned we got to be better. We got to distance ourselves from Trump, no matter how tempting it is to make him part of the story going forward, and no matter how much he's screaming for attention, we have to let him go. We've got to stay engaged in politics, but we have to make a point to only support the truth. And Democrats with the power, use it wisely. Listen to what Joe Biden said and what I know he's going to do, and try to get done every day. Be the president and be the government for everyone, not just the people that voted for you or support you financially. And for all the people who question my respect for the office of the president, and there were a good chunk of you in the last 5 years, I've respected the office of the president since I was about 5 years old, when I first started to understand what it was. I'm as patriotic now as I've ever been. But look, I respect the office of the president. The person that's in that office has to earn your respect. And Trump didn't even try. So those are my last words about Donald Trump. I hope. I really, really hope. And we'll come back with Joe Walsh. He'll join me next. And he's got some interesting stuff I really want you to hear as we continue on Live from My Office. If you were a family member interested in securing a reverse mortgage loan, listen to this invaluable information from Team Hochberg that I have right here on this paper in front of me. Your trusted local lender, that's Team Hochberg, experienced homeowners at least 62 years old, secured 44,666 reverse mortgages for them in 2020, totaling a record $10.6 billion. That's the Team Hochberg year. 2020 was bad for all of us, but he made it a little better for most of us. As a matter of fact, anybody that called Team Hochberg. These financially astute homeowners took advantage of the many benefits of reverse mortgage loans, including increasing monthly cash flow by deferring mortgage payments, the proceeds from reverse mortgage loans tax-free, extending the life of retirement funds, making home modifications to make it safer and easier to live independently, to afford in-home medical and housekeeping pros to assist with tasks around the home that become more challenging as you get older, and to enjoy your golden years without the fear of running out of money. If you'd like more information about reverse mortgage loans from local reverse mortgage loan experts, do what we do. We call Team Hochberg, 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com, and tune into Home Sweet Home Chicago, hosted by David Hochberg, Saturday mornings at 10 on WGN 720. It's Homeside Financial, an equal housing lender, NMLS number 1124061. This is Live from My Office, and no better person than former Illinois Congressman and big shot radio and podcast talent and author, and good Lord, he probably has his own show on ice. Joe Walsh joins me one more time on Live from My Office. Hi, Joe.
Steve, it's good to be with you, and don't ever forget, I was Well, for about a year, I was your warm-up act on the radio, and that will always be on my bio.
That's nice. Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying that. I want to get a plug out for you right away because I noticed on your Twitter feed you're chairing an organization that's trying to figure out what the future of the Republican Party is. And even though you refuse to accept this, I think you and our mutual friend Pat Brady and other right-thinking Republicans are the people that need to bring this party back, and that it is savable, but time's a wasting. So what are you chairing? I'm not sure what it is.
It's called the Bravery Project, Steve. And what it was during the campaign, we were going around the country virally trying to get Republicans and conservatives locally to be brave enough to come out and vote for Biden and other Democrats, to sort of follow the lead that I set by, stupidly running against Donald Trump. Post this election now, the Bravery Project is going to be about still trying to get Republicans and conservatives to put their ideas and principles first. And you and I may differ on this, Steve Cochran, and I know I probably would with Pat Brady. I think the Republican Party's toast.
Yeah, I know you do.
It's not salvageable.
Because it needs rebranding. I mean, because the principles of the Republican Party that you believe in as a conservative are necessary.
So in 30 seconds, here's what happened. The Republican Party establishment for years and years and years ignored its base voters. And then in 2016, along came a monster. And the monster conned these base voters. Well, now here we are in 2021. The base of the GOP is still tied to this monster. The monster, Donald Trump, is eating the Republican Party, but the base is tied to him. And so I think that's a permanent fracture.
Well, but we need to explain why that matters. And why it matters comes down to what people can do. And I know you and Pat Brady and others just roll your eyes at me when I say this at times. But we can change this, and we have the power to change this. But we have to show up in mass numbers for primaries. We have to go out in primaries and not leave it to the fringe left and the fringe right to determine which candidates go to the general election and who you eventually vote for. And I think there needs to be a full-on public education of that fact and why that matters, because that's the only way to limit this, then I'll primary you bullshit that's been going on and the way Washington's run.
Well, Steve, you're right, but who is the we? I mean, Donald Trump right now has about an 80% approval rating among Republican voters. Among Republican primary voters, it's north of that. So the people who come out and vote in a primary are the hardcore believers, and they are still all with Trump. Those 10 House Republicans who voted to impeach Trump, they all know, I know this, Steve, they all know they probably just lost their job next year. Not definitely, but probably. That's because, again, the Republican primary voter right now is a Trump supporter.
Right. And because
I don't see that changing. I don't see that changing. Like, I think Trump right now owns a huge chunk of the Republican base. There is a part of the Republican voter that is anti-Trump. I don't think the party can win without Trump's supporters, but I don't think they can win on their own either.
So do you think after, and we'll get into January 6th, but do you think after the, how Trump likes to name things, the Trump riots, after the Trump riots of January 6th, do you think this stink on him fades away and he becomes the guy or remains the guy? Or does it go the other way where people go, this guy needs to be shunned?
No, I think he's the guy until he says, I don't want to be the guy. And there's nothing, like I was listening to one of the Sunday shows this morning. George Stephanopoulos asked Chris Christie, is it time for the Republican Party to reject Donald Trump and move on? And I'm screaming at my TV. It's not fucking up to Chris Christie what happens to Donald Trump.
Right.
It's up to Republican Party voters. They are with him right now. I think Trump's support has hardened. I think it's intensified. I think he's lost some Republican voter on the margins. but he can get them back. I mean, you've seen the polling like I have in the last week. The vast majority of Republicans believe the election was stolen. The vast majority of Republican voters do not hold Donald Trump responsible for what happened on January 6th. And that's right now. And he doesn't have Twitter. Oh, heck yeah. If he wants to, he'll run for president in 2024 if he wants to.
But what you're describing is an unfixable situation, not just the end of the party,
the
end of democracy and the end of America. Because unless the people can be convinced that they were lied to, that for most of them it wasn't their fault, but for the good of them and their family and their town, they need to realize they were lied to and come back to sensibility. If you can't convince people of that, we're done.
It'll never happen. And I said,
well, then how do we survive? No, I'm being serious. How do we survive this?
It's a problem because we have 74 million people voted for him. I would say the polling and what I hear every day, because unlike all these other never Trumpers, because of where I come from, I literally every day hear from and engage with thousands of Trump supporters. So I would say 30 to 40 to 50 million people right now are living in an alternative reality. You are right. A democracy can't stand that way with that big of a chunk. I think what's going to happen, Steve, is, again, I think when you pull yourself above the day-to-day bullshit, I think we're seeing the end of the two-party duopoly, the 170-year-old two-party duopoly in this country. I think the Republican Party is going to become like one of those far-right European regional parties. It's going to be strong in rural red state America, but it cannot win nationally anymore. And I think eventually in the next few years, you're going to see a centrist, moderate, common sense kind of a party finally come to fruition.
Well, and that has to happen on every level, including in the media, to have a centrist point of view, no matter how much you're pissed off at the left or the right. But it's interesting to hear you say that, and I agree with you 100% in that regard. But I don't.
Well, and by the way, Steve, you make a great point. Steve, you made a great point a few minutes ago. This wasn't just Trump. You talked about the lie. Trump started the lie. Most of his Republicans the last few months echoed his lie. And then you got all the asses like Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh. All these people out there, all of his cheerleaders were echoing the lie. The vast majority of Trump's voters, Steve, are always going to believe the lie.
Yeah, but look, I'm the last person to defend Trump. I've told you before, I'll tell you again. The only person that hates Trump more than me is Melania. So, and that includes you. So just know full well that when I say this, it's in no way a defense of Trump. If 74 million people voted for Donald Trump, and there were maybe 7,000 people that, quote, stormed the Capitol, goddamn every one of them. And every one of them that did it, regardless of whether they knew they were breaking a law, should be thrown in jail. I have no sympathy, no respect for any of them. And for God's sakes, a cop died. It's just beyond outrageous. But I'm just going by percentages here. It's just math. Math doesn't lie. If 7,000 were ballsy enough to do something that's stupid, and if 10% of that 7,000 were actually there to commit harm and do evil, that 700 people are about 1/10,000th of 1% of Trump voters. So even though Republicans are answering these polls and they're saying, yeah, I believe that the election was stolen and whatever, I feel like the majority of those people are redeemable.
But here's the problem, though, and I don't mean to be disrespectful with this analogy, but it's like Islamic terrorism. When you break down the numbers of Muslims and then Islamists and then actual terrorists, the actual number of Muslims who will commit an act of terror is minute among Muslims. But then when you poll Muslims and ask them about terrorist activity, you have a much larger group of Muslims who support what terrorists are doing. You're right. a very small minority of Trump supporters went into that Capitol with designs to kill Mike Pence and overthrow the election. But there's a much larger cohort, Steve, of Trump supporters that has no problem with what those people did on January 6th, and or they're blaming Antifa and other people. That's a really big chunk of people that supports kind of what happened on January 6th. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It doesn't make me feel any better, but that's not your job. A lot of people want to write this off as a white thing. To me, it's not a white thing. It's a character thing.
Yes, but again, we're primarily talking about and this is what Trump was able to grab a hold of 5 years ago so easily. When we talk about Trump's base, the Republican Party base, we're primarily talking about older white folk. And I get it again. I told you a few minutes ago, the reason why Trump had such a great opportunity to grab these people in 16 is because these were primarily older white folk, good, decent people who just felt like everything in the country was changing too fast. And they had fears and concerns and angers and resentments. And the party ignored them. And then along came Trump in 16. He fed them a bunch of bullshit. I'm going to build a wall. I'll make Mexico pay for it. I'll bring back Merry Christmas to the country. And everything else he said. And these good, decent, primarily white folk, they bought all of this stuff because they clung to it.
That part of it is probably the least of our problems. The fact that there's an argument about whether it's a white thing or not. We know there is racism in this country. Unfortunately, there probably always will be. But the next generation of kids are the folks that can help change this. I know people have been saying that forever, and I don't mean to have you sing Kumbaya in the background.
Yeah.
But what about that cliche that everything that's wrong with America can be fixed about what's right in America? Is that still true?
Yeah, and by the way, Steve, I didn't mean to misinterpret what you said.
You're right. I'm wrong.
Oh, no, you're right. Trumpism, I don't buy this notion that racism is what Trumpism is all about. Now, there are white supremacists and racist elements who have been emboldened. Here's the problem. You're right. Again, we're primarily talking about older folk. Younger folk have a much more tolerant and open-minded outlook on all of these issues. The problem right now for the Republican Party is the brand is it's a Trumpism party, and that is just anathema to younger people. Younger people want nothing to do with Trump and Trumpism, which again makes me believe that there's got to be something new created. Again, a centrist, common sense, let's get shit done, tolerant kind of a party. And look, Steve, if the Democratic Party continues to be tugged to the left, and you've got the Republican Party that is really an intolerant Trumpist party, well, you just said it. That's not where most Americans are. Neither one of those.
So let me take you back to the 6th. In your 2 years in Congress, you're well familiar with that building. You work there every day. Sure, things have changed in regards to security in various ways things are done, but one of the great reasons democracy has lasted that long is the respect for the traditions and the way, maddening though it may be, that Congress works. You can't just walk into Congress. You haven't been able to do that for a long time, and you shouldn't be able to. The investigation continues. There had to have been somebody on the inside who helped these creeps do what they did. But what is your theory on how things were so apparently unprepared when the warnings were coming for weeks, if not months?
So you may disagree with me. This is what I think. You had about 20 to 30,000 Trump supporters who met in D.C. that day for that big Stop the Steal rally. And you're right. There was intelligence that said they had something planned. So why weren't we prepared? And I think the reason is that because this was 20 to 30,000 white patriot Trump supporters, people overlooked it. The Capitol Police, our law enforcement, just assumed that they wouldn't do it because it was 20,000 white Trump supporters. Steve, if 20,000 Black Lives Matter protesters were rallying in Washington D.C., you can bet your bottom dollar that the Capitol would have been fortified and protected.
Well, I agree 100%. And people would have died. There would have been shots fired in a way there wasn't on the 6th.
So I just think we let our guard down. They did because of who was protesting that day.
And the assumption that they wouldn't do what they did.
Yes, this is again, I think the racial element was part of it, but these were a bunch of Trump patriot white supporters. And to your point, look, I love the Capitol Police. They protected me every day I was there. They're good men and women. I think we're going to find out, though, that there may have been some of them that had their guard down and or assisted with the storming of the Capitol. Look, Steve, I'm pro-cop like you're pro-cop, but we are finding out that there is got a little bit of a white supremacy problem in some of our law enforcement agencies that needs to be dealt with.
Yeah, every police organization. I've had conversations with the Chicago superintendent, David Brown, about this, who is an African-American and a guy that I have a lot of hope for, respect for. But every big city and small town police department has to do an autopsy of their police department and find every racist and say, you're done.
Bingo, Steve. And I will say, as someone who knows the Capitol Police pretty well, that's a problem there as well.
Sure, of course it is, and it has to be controlled and stopped. All right, so let's talk about the to me the more dangerous long-term problem, and that's the Jim Jordan. For God's sakes, buy yourself a coat, you asshole. The Jim Jordan, Josh Hawley, Lindsey Graham. And maybe the biggest fraud of all, because he hides behind Mitch McConnell and others, Kevin McCarthy. Yeah, these are people you know, and I know many of you had good relationships with and you considered friends. What do they think the end game is here? Are they all going to get famous and write a book and make $20,000 speeches? How do they think this is going to end? Because they're not stupid enough to think that they're going to be able to have their version of republicanism sweep the entire country and put the Democrats out of business. It doesn't work that way.
Most of them aren't stupid. Matt Gaetz down in Florida is stupid. But you're right. Look, Jim Jordan and I, Steve, were really good friends. Jordan and I were really close. Now we're like political enemies. I think, again, most of these guys, Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell, you know this, you and I've said this before, put Jordan aside, the vast majority of these Republicans from day one hated Trump. They despised Trump. They all made a collective deal with the devil, right? They never thought he'd get reelected. They said he's a bad guy. He's bad for the party. He's bad for the country. They said this 4 years ago. Plenty of them said it to me privately. But, Joe, we're going to get what we can get out of him for 4 years, and then it'll be fucking gone, and we can go back to the way we were. They made a bad bet because what they did was, they created a monster. And every time they looked the other way or every time they aided and abetted him over the course of these last 4 years, the monster got stronger. And we saw the monster in action a couple weeks ago.
So what about this notion that, and then we can get back to where we were before?
Gone. Too late. Too late.
So the deal with the devil's blown up, and now what's the future for look, Mitch McConnell's 78. He's not in great health. He can continue to be the incredible ass that he's been and the horrible person he's been because he's going to be dead soon. But what does Jim Jordan hope this is going to make for him and bring for him? Because all human behavior, there's a reason you do it, and there's a reason you continue to do it. How does somebody like Jim Jordan think this is going to end?
They're all Jim Jordan. They're all now. They're like CEOs of their own corporation. the Republican Party, and some of them will tell me this privately, they understand that the party is shrinking, and it's becoming more extreme because it's shrinking. So Jim Jordan represents a really conservative district. He never has to worry about getting reelected. So like a lot of these guys now, their interest is their own self-interest, promoting their own brand and trying to be a big deal in this shrinking Republican Party. And look, Steve, it's a great future for them individually, even if the party shrinks.
Well, great future economically, but beyond that, what's their future?
Jim Jordan's on Fox News every night. He's a leader, and he's a mover and shaker in a leader in an increasingly shrinking Republican Party. Matt Gaetz, I mean, these guys are big deals. What's Adam Kinzinger's future? I mean, he will not have a home in this more extreme Trumpist party. Jim Jordan will.
So these 10 that in the House in particular that had the guts to stand up and do the right thing, they're done as Republicans based on your belief of where we are and where we're going.
If any credible pro-Trump Republican can beat Adam Kinzinger or any of them in a primary next year, any credible pro-Trump Republican. So all 10 of those Republicans, if they want to run again in 22, their jobs are on the line. And I think they all knew that going in. And it's complicated, Steve, because we're going to have redistricting this year. So every one of their districts will look different. The talk is that Illinois is going to lose maybe two more congressional seats. So maybe Mr. Kinzinger would have been drawn out of the district anyways.
And we should explain, by the way, that's based on the census and when the census is finalized.
Yeah. And that the Democrats will control the map in Illinois. And I think even somebody like Lynn Cheney, there's strong talk in Wyoming that there's going to be a strong Republican pro-Trump challenger to Lynn Cheney in Wyoming, so she could be done.
Sometimes when you find out who the assholes are because they're exposed on such a high level, those that may have believed fall away. Are there enough of them out there to help make a difference? Those that believed and now they see in the bright light of the post-Trump world and after January 6th who Lindsey Graham really is, though if you didn't know that by now, you weren't paying attention, and who Jordan and these guys really are, and certainly McCarthy. There's got to be a chunk of folks that have come around, don't you think?
There are, but again, Steve, I will tell you this. I engage every day still, say, with 4,000 to 5,000 to 6,000 Trump supporters every day. And 95 to 98% of them are much more Jim Jordan people than, say, Joe Walsh or Adam Kinzinger people. So yes, there's 3 to 4 to 5 to 6% of Republicans there to work with. And I will remind you, Steve, that a lot of people no longer are self-identified Republicans like me. They're out there in la-la land right now. So there is a small base of moderates and principled conservatives to work with. You can't win on your own. And the Trump people outnumber us still. And I think they will for the foreseeable future.
Got a name for the new party we're going to form? I think the Whigs have been done, and it's not a great name.
It's you and I could have a lot of fun talking about it, but the reality is, if it goes this way, Steve, let's be brutal. The reality is we're kind of ceding the next 10 years to the Democrats.
Yeah, because it'll take that long.
If there's a formal break, which I think there could be, neither one of us, the Trump party and the non-Trump party, can win on its own. So the Democrats would kind of have a wide open playing field for a while, but I think you got to suck it up and do that.
Yeah, and I also think that you have to count on the fact, pardon me, that President-elect Biden is who he has said he is and who he has proven to be most of the time, and doesn't just turn this over to the radicals on the left side who want to make this progressive agenda that's no more appealing to the entire country than what the far right wants to do.
And I don't think I agree, Steve, and I don't think he will. And I'm hopping groups of people here. I want to give you a shout out and me a shout out, but you a shout out because you are a rare fucking duck in the media/radio industry. A big pet peeve of mine is Trump is Trump, and the Jim Jordans and Lindsey Grahams, they are who they are. But I'm so pissed off, Steve, at all the so-called conservatives in talk radio and on Fox News and all the rest. Man, they're as culpable here.
100%.
They spread Trump's lies and they get the ratings and the money, and they sold out every bit as bad as the Jim Jordans of the world did. Somebody like you and me on a much smaller scale, you'd grab that microphone every day and you'd say what you believed.
Well, it's costing. Look, here's the bottom line, and we're not looking for high fives or pats on the butt. We're doing okay, but it costs both of us our jobs.
Yes.
It's absolutely the truth. And the reason is because you got to be able to look at yourself in the mirror. You got to be able to look at your wife or your husband or your kids or your grandkids or whoever and not have them look at you with shame, wondering why you did what you did or didn't do anything at all.
Bingo.
All right. So we're recording this on January 17th, the Sunday before the inauguration. I want to ask you one other thing about that January 6th awful, awful day.
Yeah.
You know some of those rooms that people were taken to and to be safe in. It's remarkable that more people weren't killed. It's remarkable the vice president wasn't taken hostage, that the speaker wasn't taken hostage or killed. Was there a plan that you guys were drilled on in the event of this worst case scenario? So that's why it worked.
Well, that's why it worked. There's a plan, and we all know what the plan is, and we know where we're whisked to, and we know what we have to do. And you're as a member of Congress, Steve, you're drilled on that. But in reality, when it really happens, it's a different ball game. So, as you said, I am still amazed. You talk about Pence, 60 seconds and 90 feet.
Right.
The mob came within 90 feet and 60 seconds of confronting Mike Pence. I can tell you, having spoken to members of Congress privately, the mob was even closer to members of Congress than that. So, yes, there is a plan that we're all drilled on. It's not executed often, so there were some problems with the plan because it never should have gotten that close either.
And one more piece of evidence, not that anybody really needs it, that Donald Trump is one of the world's worst human beings.
Yes.
His vice president and the person second in command in this country. All you need to know how he feels about this country, what he cares about, whether this country is going to be okay, and gives a shit about his job, is that Mike Pence was that close, and Mike Pence's family was that close to being hurt or worse, and Trump never checked on him. And as far as we know to this point, with great reporting going on, still hasn't made sure he was okay. They had a meeting, but the meeting was about how Pence let him down, not about whether or not Mike Pence was okay.
He almost, when you think about it, Steve, Donald Trump almost got Mike Pence killed.
Yep, 100%. That's not hyperbole at all. That's an absolute fact.
Not at all.
Just absolutely outrageous. A piece of breaking news, if you will, if you can do breaking news on a podcast. James Murdoch, one of the two main offspring of Rupert Murdoch, made a public statement today in a public letter saying news outlets, including his own, that promoted lies are to blame for the U.S. Capitol riot.
Bingo. Does he have anything to do with Fox News anymore?
Yeah, he does.
I don't know.
I think he does. But the point there is, I get it.
Yeah.
But to me, and I'm glad he said it, but to me, this is another shade of Lindsey Graham, a guy who, if he had been in Berlin in 1945, would have come out of Hitler's bunker and went, "Oh no, I'm with you guys." Murdoch saying it now matters.
Too late.
But too late, because the Newsmaxes and all the others of the world that have taken to space, they're out there to be the new outlets.
Steve, what a last 12 months this has been. When you think about it, the lies that Donald Trump and Sean Hannity and Fox News and all the rest of them told month after month about the virus, lying about and downplaying the virus, got people killed. And for months they lied about a stolen election, which, as you said, got 5 people killed and a police officer. It's just they ought to get their comeuppance. It's just wrong
on every level, on every possible level. Who's more pathetic, by the way, Ted Cruz or Mike Pence?
That's a really great question, because your gut, you want to say Cruz right away because he's so unlikable. I know Pence pretty well. I'm more disappointed in Pence, the way he's behaved. I don't expect anything more out of Ted Cruz because he is what he is. I'm just disappointed in Pence. Mike Pence is a good man, Steve. 5 years ago, he made his own deal with the devil. He knew Donald Trump was a horrible human being, but he said, I'm going to be his vice president because I want to be president one day.
Yeah, how's that
I think that's done.
Yeah, I was going to say, how's that working out?
Well, yeah, I don't think he has that option anymore.
I guess I would just say to people listening who, actively hate you or I, and believe it or not, as charming as we are, there are a couple. But if the leader of your organization is a failed reality star and the leader of your organization believes that last Wednesday was justified and doesn't apologize for it, and the leader of your organization endorses a complete fantasy land, a sci-fi movie called QAnon, which on some level is run by a guy with a fur hat and horns, maybe it's time to get new leaders. Maybe it's time to take a look at your choices in life because you've really picked the wrong team. Anything you'd like to add to that?
I will add this. Because I come from the world of these people, the average Trump supporters, I'm going to make it my mission the next couple of years to try to, as best as I can, rescue some of them.
Yep,
some of them, Steve, are lost forever. But we can't, as a country, exist if we have 40 to 50 million people believing a lie like this and believing that an American election was stolen. We can't function if that's the case.
It's my friend Joe Walsh who has seen the light. You should look for it too. And Joe does Joe does a fine job on the radio every day and in podcast form. Where do we pick up the podcast?
FSilencepodcast.com. F as in Frank. FSilencepodcast.com.
That's not what the F is for. FSilencepodcast.com. And for people in the Chicago area, they can hear you on the radio on what station?
WCGO, but anybody in Chicago or anybody around the country, go to gabradionetwork.com, gabradionetwork.com. Look for the Joe Walsh Show page. Enough promoting me, and be following Steve Cochran on Twitter and everywhere.
And live from my office where my friend Joe Walsh has informed all of us. And it's always good to have you on. Thanks for the fight. Keep it up, buddy. Keep it up.
Love you, Steve. Love you, man. Thanks.
You're all the best. Thanks, dude. On every episode of Live from My Office, I tell you about a charity, or I do this, and that is I ask you to send me your favorite charities. You can do that by dropping me an email at thecochranshow@gmail.com, or follow me on social media at Cochran Show on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. I should say on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. It's Steve Cochran Show on Instagram. And you can get a hold of me any of those ways. Or if you know my cell phone, text me. And tell me about a charity that you want me to give some free publicity to. That's what we do in this segment every week on Live from My Office. And we do it every time we do a new episode, which is Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. But occasionally I like to stop down and give it a plug and make sure you can get involved with organizations that you support and love. None of them, by the way, are too small to get a little love from the show. So send me that information to thecochranshow@gmail.com. I want to thank Ross Cochran for making sure we get this show done 3 times a week. New episodes Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. My final words on Donald Trump are bye-bye, Donnie, and welcome to President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. I am optimistic about our future. and I hope you are as well. And by the way, in case you're wondering, as many of you have asked through the years, I'm an independent. I'm not a Republican, and I'm not a Democrat. And as time goes on, more of us will be in the middle than ever. Could we get a third party because of Donald Trump? Maybe he was better than I thought. I'll see you next time we do this, and that'll be on Friday when we'll hopefully be able to lighten the load a little bit and have a little fun on the next Live from My Office.
Thank you for listening to Live from My Office, a service of Monkey Run Productions. All rights reserved. The podcast is hosted by Steve Cochran, and it's mixed, edited, and produced by me, Ross Cochran. Support the show by subscribing wherever you're listening and by telling your friends about it. Follow Steve on all social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and make sure you check out this episode's show notes for relevant information discussed during the conversations. You can also email the show directly at thecochranshow@gmail.com with any questions or comments, and that's the best place to tell us about your favorite nonprofit so we can make sure we mention them on the next episode. Steve is available for corporate speaking gigs. He would love to MC your event, and occasionally, he's funny. Thank you for listening. Head to cochranshow.com for more.